For the next hour, we're going to be talking about making Great Outdoors Month a vehicle for action, and we have Ruth Coleman, the incoming president of the National Association of State Park Directors, the wonderful leader of the California State Parks, to help us think through some of the opportunities that lie in being partners. And before we, as with the panel comes up here, let me add one more thing about partners just to reinforce. The other thing we heard when we were at the first Partners Outdoors is pick your partners carefully. Disney was just going through the extrication of being a partner with the old Eastern Airlines. Disney told us that they had learned the very painful lesson that Eastern Airlines took their guests and made them disgruntled getting them to Florida. And Disney tried really hard to reverse that bad experience of traveling to Orlando. And they said, duh, why should we be partners with people who are getting us disgruntled customers? And that's part of where Disney taught us about magic moments and tragic moments. You know, Traditions 101, they run you through. They say, we need to prevent tragic moments. It takes 33 magic moments to make people forget about the tragic moments. So that miserable travel experience that people had, Disney had to do 33 magic moments to eradicate that memory of the lost baggage, the snarly flight attendant, all those kinds of things. And so they paid millions of dollars and got rid of Eastern Airlines as a partner, despite a contract and everything else. They said, wrong partner. Anyway, important things. Ruth, it's yours.
Great. Well, we're going to be talking today on this panel about an organizing construct to excite people about getting outdoors. And it's all in the, everybody's leaving, so we really should give everybody 5 minutes to whatever. We'll just start it anyway. One of the things we've been doing in this conference is sharing information, and I just wanted to quickly give you guys an update on something that we've been working on with the National Association of State Park Directors, along with National Park Service and the National Association of Rec and Parks. So this is a state, federal, and a local consortium of folks, and some of the people in this room actually sit in our conference call. And we started it with the Children in Nature issue as a way to organize all of our leaders across sort of the three areas of federal, state, and local, and identify best practices. Just sort of let's work together and share ideas to deal with this amazing challenge that we face, which is the fact that this next generation is disconnecting. So we have a new we have a best practices site now. And interestingly, it's starting to be used by higher education to some extent. And what has happened is that it's been populated by the best ideas. Each state was allowed to submit 5. I think each federal region was allowed to submit a certain number of projects that they felt were their best examples of ways to connect kids to nature, and then the locals have also submitted some. We've now, in our efforts, have been segueing over to focus on health. Because once you develop and you populate your best practices sites, then you're like, well, what's the purpose of this committee? And we realized that the whole health equation is sort of the next wave that we got to figure out how to ride. And so we're now creating a best practices sites of programs that people are doing that are connecting people to the parks and focusing on health. You know, there's several examples that have been out there. I know in Massachusetts they have a Healthy Heart Walk, things where they're really marketing the health aspect of the recreation. And so that site is now starting to get underway, and we're starting to try to share ideas. So I just wanted to put it out there that there's a lot of good information as people are trying to explore what are ways to connect kids to nature, what are ways to emphasize the health aspects of what we do. The health issue kind of broadens, not just from kids obviously, but it gets to all populations. But we find if we focus on families, then you get all the generations. Today we're going to talk about Great Outdoors Month, which is one of those best practices, and it's something that last year, I think it was the first time, we had all 50 states with governors who endorsed it. And I know in our own state, the process of getting into governor endorsement is a whole process of submitting the idea, and it goes to the next level, the next level, the next level, so it gets all the way up through the cabinet. And so when it gets approved, it means it's been read by a lot of different entities. And so it's a good thing to get a governor endorsement, because it means a lot of decision makers have had to look at it and think about it. In California, we're going to be doing one with part of this whole campground, Great Outdoor Campground. this is sort of an example of a partnership coming out of adversity for us. We had an initiative that was put on the November ballot, and it lost, unfortunately, but it would have placed an $18 surcharge on your vehicle, and in exchange you would have gotten it free to all state parks all year round. So you think, well, duh, why would anybody vote for that? But they didn't. The public hates taxes. And it wasn't really, the polling and all this, it looked really good right up to the election, and then it just tanked. And a lot of the postmortem suggests that it was really the negativity of the entire election. We had so much airtime being bought by one of our candidates, you may have heard of Meg Whitman, who spent $140 million to lose. And she lost fairly badly. I don't remember what the dollar price per vote was, because I remember by April she had spent the equivalent of a Happy Meal for every voter in California. So, you know, then fast forward all the way to November, you can imagine how much she had spent. And so she bought up all the airtime. And so the campaign just couldn't buy it. You couldn't afford any airtime at all. So campaigns for any other initiatives really suffered. So, and it was just, as well known on a national level, it was an ugly election. So here we are, it's the aftermath. We've just lost this initiative. We know our budget's in the tank. It's going to take even further, and our sort of light at the end of the tunnel had just disappeared. And I was quoting Jon Stewart to my staff saying, sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel is not the promised land, sometimes it's just New Jersey. And I pray that our initiative will become our New Jersey. So
I was born.
Watch it, Ruth.
Several staff said that too. You take that up with Jon Stewart, I'm quoting him. But the good news for our initiative was that there's over 750 organizations endorsed it. And many of them were organizations we'd never heard of, including a lot of public health organizations. So we sort of started looking at the list and saying, okay, these are all people who clearly care about parks, and start forming partnerships. And so one of the groups that we met for the first time was the California Recreational Vehicle Association. Well, it's Recreational Vehicle and Campground Association. So it's a for-profit group that represents all the for-profit campgrounds as well as RV parks. And we never met with them on any formal level, so I met with their president. And through that, we're now going to have a partnership, and we're going to work with them to do this Great American Camp Out. We're also talking about in the future perhaps setting up co-tables or booths at a state fair or some of the county fairs, so we can start marketing our respective areas collectively, because while we have 15,000 campsites in California, they have 90,000. So they're clearly the larger provider. But people don't go to their campgrounds just to camp at that place. That's just like a cheap hotel. People go to that campground because they want to go to our parks, because that's what's fun. Now, if you really can work the system, you get into our parks and camp. But most people end up in their campgrounds. And their campgrounds are great. They provide good service, but it's not necessarily a destination in itself. The park in the area is the destination. So we know we have a tremendous synergy here. And they're providing overnight accommodation for our visitors that we can't provide. So it's obviously a relationship that ought to be furthered. So we're going to be meeting with them for the first time as part of this Great Outdoors Month. And so it's an exciting new partnership, and it just shows you that even in bad times you can start finding new friends, and that's obviously what it's going to take. So today we're going to hear from a couple other folks who've done a lot more on Great Outdoors Month than we have in California. And so I'm excited to hear from both of them. The first one you've already heard from, Frank Peterson, who's the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation president. And so since his bio is already read before, I won't repeat it, you can all read it. And following Frank will be Mary Margaret Diotis. Did I get it right? Close. Diotis. Diotis, okay. And she's the Senior Director of Corporate Relations and Special Events at the National Wildlife Federation. And she's been with them for several years, and prior to that, she was working with the United Cerebral Palsy Association and has been quite a good fundraiser and knows a lot about fundraising. We talked a lot last night. She has all kinds of great ideas of how to approach donors. And that's something that all of us need to get into the business also, is how do we tap the philanthropic community? Because if you look at the philanthropic pie, most of it goes to health, a really large slice goes to higher ed, and a very, very skinny little slice comes to environment. And yet these places that we protect have as much significance to people's lives as the university they attended, and for many people now these are sort of their new sanctuary. And so they take on an area of spiritual significance to people. And so when they're doing their trusts for, their planned giving, a lot of them might remember a park as a place that they met a spouse or got engaged or got married. I mean, these are places where seminal events happen in their lives. and yet we have never been able to really tap them as alumni in the way that higher ed does, or touch the heartstrings the way that the health industry has been able to. And so having people like Margaret is great because she knows how to get into that arena. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Frank and going to do some interesting things. Sure.
Okay, having been an RBFF for a few years, I've gotten to know Derek and trying to contribute as best we can with our high effort machinery to Great Outdoors Month. During that month, we run National Fishing and Boating Week, and there's all sorts. There's National Marina Day last year, all sorts of different activities. And what I like to do is just step back a little bit. You hear all these great things, and everyone in this room is doing something that they think is the best thing and the most fantastic thing in the world. But I ask you, collectively, we have this month of June where we get 50 governors to sign a proclamation. The president usually signs a proclamation. But what are we trying to achieve? What does success look like? I want you to envision what a successful Great Outdoors Month would be. I want you to think about that. Is the success getting 50 governors to sign a proclamation and the president to sign the proclamation? Is it a success where we have 200 events running across the country? What is success? And I struggle, with this. What can we affect? We can't solve all the problems that have been outlined, but I think we should start there. I think we should define what we, on July 1st, we all sat down, did this meet our criteria for success? Okay. Who's our audience? Okay, we get 50 governors and the president to sign a proclamation. Does that matter to the 7-year-old kid that's never been exposed to the outdoors? Okay, who is our target? What do we want to try to achieve? Again, it gets back to that vision of what success looks like. How do we coordinate all these different efforts? I mean, I can tell you what we do during National Fishing and Boating Week, and I can tell you how many press releases go out, and how many radio and TV interviews I do, and how I promote, fishing and boating as the gateway activity of the outdoors, and how I try to tie that into healthy lifestyles and all that good stuff. But is that a success? If it doesn't generate the youth of this country or people in general to get outdoors, I don't think it's a success, as much as we like to tout it. So, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, but I think we got to take a step back, and we really got to think about this. And then, coordination of efforts. I was talking, I don't know if she's here today, the person who was in charge of the rec.gov website. What is the coordinating piece? What is the place where we want everyone to go, where all these events and all these things could be, and what do we want to promote? I think we've got to do some thinking around that. So, not really knowing what the answers are, I throw it out to the group. And Derek, I don't know how you organize the whole project, and I know you've got a slightly smaller staff than most of us do. But I challenge you to put a team together that really starts with looking at what success is. And what I've heard the time I've been here, success is really starting to look at the youth of this country and getting them involved in the outdoors. So I think as a starter, the Great Outdoors Month should activate kids to go outdoors. So how do we do that? And what vehicles do we use to do that? How do we coordinate it? And then the most important thing, again, just talking to rec.gov, and they're revising that whole site, and they're going to be doing a whole bunch of different stuff, but they have no money to promote it. And I met the new VP marketing of the RV Association. How would you like to promote RVs and you have no money to do it? That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? So we've got to think about how we tie this all together, figure out what success looks like, how we're going to motivate, what that looks like, and then how are we going to promote that across all these different platforms in a coordinated effort.